Before I share my story, let me ask you, what would you do if the woman who was supposed to be your family tried to erase you from your own business, right in front of everyone? I thought I was building a legacy, a place for my family to thrive. But the day my mother-in-law ordered security to throw me out of my own store, I realized I'd spent years letting her take more and more control until I was the one on the outside. This isn't just a story about business or pride. It's about the moment you decide to fight for what's yours, even if it means breaking someone else's heart. So settle in, and if you've ever wondered what you'd do in my shoes, hit that subscribe button. Because what I did next changed not just my business, but the way I see myself forever. The day my mother-in-law ordered security to throw me out of my own store, I realized I'd spent my whole life making room for her, never expecting she'd try to take everything. It started with a dream. Not the kind you have at night, but the kind you build with your hands, your sweat, your hope. I'd always wanted to own a store, a place where people could come in, feel at home, find something special. After years of saving, planning, and working 2 jobs, I finally opened my own boutique on Main Street. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every shelf, every display, every little detail had my touch. My husband, Eric, was supportive, at least at first. He helped with the paperwork, painted the walls, even built the checkout counter with his own hands. But as the store grew, as the hours got longer and the stress piled up, he started to pull away. He said he was proud of me, but I could see the strain in his eyes, the way he flinched when I talked about expanding, about hiring more staff, about making the store our family's future. That's when my mother-in-law, Dolores, stepped in. She was a force of nature, sharp, ambitious, always dressed to impress. She'd run her own business for years, and she made it clear from the start that she knew better than I did. At first, I was grateful for her advice. She helped me negotiate with suppliers, taught me how to read a balance sheet, even introduced me to her network of friends in the Chamber of Commerce. But Dolores didn't know how to let go. She started coming in every day, rearranging displays, criticizing my choices, making suggestions that sounded more like orders. She'd pull staff aside, telling them how things should be done, undermining my authority at every turn. She'd host meetings in the back office, leaving me out, then tell me what decisions had been made. I tried to push back, to remind her that this was my store, my dream. But she'd just smile, pat my hand, and say, "I'm only trying to help, dear. You're still new at this." Eric stayed out of it. He said he didn't want to get in the middle, that he was grateful his mother was helping. "She's just trying to make things easier for you," he'd say, not seeing the way her presence made everything harder. The store became a battleground. I'd come in early to set up a new display, only to find Dolores had changed it overnight. I'd schedule staff meetings, only to find she'd already met with everyone and given them new instructions. I'd order inventory, only to find she'd canceled my orders and placed her own. The staff was caught in the middle. Some were loyal to me, others to Dolores. The tension was thick, the air heavy with whispered complaints and nervous glances. I tried to keep the peace, to remind everyone that we were a team, but it felt like I was fighting a war on 2 fronts, one for my business and one for my dignity. One afternoon, I came in to find Dolores in my office, her feet up on my desk, my calendar open in front of her. "Good morning, dear," she said, not looking up. "I've made a few changes to the schedule. I hope you don't mind." I bit back my frustration, forcing a smile. "Actually, I do mind, Dolores. This is my store. I need to be the one making those decisions." She looked up, her eyes cold. "You're too soft, Anna. You let people walk all over you. If you want this business to succeed, you need to toughen up." I clenched my fists, my voice trembling. "I appreciate your help, but I need you to let me run my store." She stood, her posture stiff. "If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." That night, I cried in the shower, the water washing away my tears, my anger, my fear. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to please Dolores, trying to earn her approval, trying to make her see me as more than just her son's wife. I thought about the store, about the dream I'd built, about the future I wanted for myself and for Eric. I realized then that I was tired of making myself small. I was tired of letting Dolores take up all the space in my life. I decided that the next time she crossed the line, I wouldn't back down. If you've ever had to fight for what's yours, or if you want to see what happens when a woman finally stands up to her mother-in-law, don't forget to like and subscribe. The next part of this story will show you just how far a woman can go when she's pushed too far. The next morning, I arrived at the store before sunrise. The street was quiet, the sky just beginning to lighten, the air cool and salty from the ocean a few blocks away. I unlocked the door, breathing in the familiar scent of coffee and lavender from the candles I always lit before opening. For a few precious minutes, the store was mine again, silent, peaceful, full of possibility. I walked the aisles, straightening displays, running my fingers over the shelves I'd painted myself, remembering the early days when every sale felt like a miracle. I thought about the customers who'd become friends, the staff who'd become family, the pride I'd felt every time someone said, "This place feels like home." But as the clock ticked toward opening, my anxiety returned. I knew Dollars would be in soon, her heels clicking on the tile, her perfume filling the air before she even said a word. I braced myself, rehearsing what I'd say if she tried to take over again. Dollars arrived at 8:00 sharp, as always. She swept in with a flourish, her hair perfectly styled, her lips painted a shade of red that dared anyone to challenge her. She greeted the staff by name, complimented the new window display, which she'd rearranged the night before, and made a beeline for the office. "Anna, dear," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "I've scheduled a meeting with the suppliers for this afternoon. I hope you don't mind." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stand tall. "Actually, Dollars, I do mind. I already have a meeting scheduled with them. I'd appreciate it if you'd let me handle it." She raised an eyebrow, her smile never faltering. "Of course, dear, I'm just trying to help." I nodded, my jaw tight. "I know, but I need to do this my way." She shrugged, her eyes cold. "Suit yourself." The day dragged on, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The staff tiptoed around us, their eyes darting between me and Dollars, waiting to see who would win the next round. I tried to focus on my work, but every time I turned around, Dollars was there, second-guessing my decisions, questioning my choices, making suggestions that sounded more like commands. At lunch, I found her in the break room, holding court with two of the younger employees. She was telling a story about her own business, about how she'd built it from nothing, about how she'd never let anyone stand in her way. "You have to be tough in this world," she said, her voice ringing out. "You can't let your feelings get in the way of business. That's where Anna goes wrong. She's too soft." I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding, my hands clenched at my sides. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, to tell her to get out. But I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. "Everything all right in here?" I asked, my voice calm. Dollars turned, her smile tight. "Of course, dear, just giving the girls some advice." I nodded, my eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you, Dollars, but I think I can handle it from here." She stood, gathering her things, her eyes cold. "If you say so." That afternoon, I met with the suppliers, negotiated a better deal, and placed the orders myself. I felt a surge of pride, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could take back control. But when I returned to the office, I found Dollars on the phone, her voice low and urgent. "I don't care what Anna says," she was saying. "This is my family's business. I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding, my anger rising. "Is there something you want to tell me, Dollars?" I asked, my voice steady. She hung up, her eyes flashing. "Just business, dear. Nothing for you to worry about." I nodded, my jaw tight. "We'll see about that." That night, I went home exhausted, my body aching, my mind racing. Eric was waiting for me, his face tired, his eyes full of worry. "How was your day?" he asked, pouring me a glass of wine. I sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the day pressing down on me. "Your mother is making things impossible. She's undermining me at every turn. I can't keep doing this, Eric. I can't keep fighting her alone." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "She means well, Anna. She just wants what's best for the store." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "No, Eric, she wants what's best for herself. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're part of the problem." He looked at me, his eyes full of pain. "I'm sorry, Anna, I'll talk to her, I promise." But I could see the doubt in his eyes, the fear, the loyalty that would always be divided. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the words echoing in my mind. "This is my family's business. I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." I realized then that Dollars wasn't going to stop, not until she had everything. And I decided that the next time she crossed the line, I wouldn't just stand up for myself. I'd fight back. If you want to see what happens when a woman finally takes back her power, and if you believe in standing up to bullies, even when they're family, don't forget to like and subscribe. The next part of this story will show you just how far a mother can go when she's pushed too far. The next week, the store felt like a minefield. Every morning, I arrived early, hopping for a few moments of peace before Dollars swept in. I'd walk the aisles, straightening displays, checking inventory, trying to remind myself why I'd started this business in the first place. But the tension was always there, lurking in the corners, waiting to pounce. Dollars started coming in even earlier, sometimes beating me to the store. I'd find her in the office, her glasses perched on her nose, poring over the books. She'd leave notes on my desk, lists of things I'd done wrong, suggestions for improvement, reminders of who she thought was really in charge. The staff grew more anxious. Maria, my best cashier, started asking if she should run things by Dollars before making decisions. Even the delivery guys seemed to sense the shift, their jokes quieter, their smiles more forced. One afternoon, I overheard Dollars talking to one of the new hires, a young man named Tyler. She was telling him how the store had been saved by her expertise, how she'd stepped in when things were falling apart, how she'd taught Anna everything she knows. I stood in the stockroom, my fists clenched, my heart pounding. I wanted to storm out and confront her, to tell Tyler the truth, to remind everyone that this was my dream, my sweat, my sacrifice. But I bit my tongue, knowing that a public fight would only make things worse. That night, I called Ruth, my voice trembling. "I don't know how much more I can take," I whispered. "She's turning everyone against me. She's rewriting history." Ruth was silent for a moment, then said, "Anna, you have to document everything. Every decision, every conversation, every time she oversteps. If this goes to court, you'll need proof." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "You're right, I'll start tomorrow." The next day, I bought a new notebook and started keeping a log. I wrote down every time Dollars changed the schedule, every time she canceled an order, every time she contradicted me in front of the staff. I saved emails, printed out text messages, even recorded a few of our conversations on my phone. It felt sneaky, but I knew I had to protect myself. I knew Dollars was building a case against me, and I wasn't going to let her win. One Friday afternoon, I came back from a meeting with a supplier to find Dollars in the office with the security manager, Mr. Patel. They were speaking in low voices, their faces serious. When I walked in, Dollars stood up, her posture stiff. "Anna, we need to talk," she said, her voice cold. "There have been some concerns about your management. The staff is uncomfortable. The numbers aren't adding up. I think it's best if you take a step back for a while." I stared at her, disbelief and anger warring inside me. "This is my store, Dollars. You don't have the authority to make that decision." She smiled, her eyes hard. "Actually, I do. Eric and I are both on the business license, and as of this morning, he's signed over his voting rights to me." My heart dropped. I looked at Mr. Patel, who shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner," he said, "but I have to ask you to leave, for now." I felt the room spin, the walls closing in. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking, and walked out, the staff watching in stunned silence. I sat in my car, the keys in my lap, tears streaming down my face. I thought about all the years I'd spent building the store, all the sacrifices I'd made, all the dreams I'd had. I thought about Eric, about his silence, about the way he'd let his mother take everything. I realized then that I was done playing nice. If you want to see what happens when a woman finally fights back, and if you believe in standing up for yourself, even when it means breaking someone else's heart. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The next part of this story will show you just how far a woman can go when she's pushed out of her own life. I spent the weekend in a fog of anger and disbelief. I barely slept, replaying the scene in the office over and over in my mind. Dolar's cold smile, Mr. Patel's apologetic eyes, the stunned faces of my staff as I was escorted out of my own store. I kept waiting for Eric to call to come home to explain himself, but he didn't. He stayed at his mother's house, sending only a single text. "Let's talk when things calm down." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to drive to Dolar's house and demand she give me back my life. But instead, I sat at the kitchen table, my notebook open, documenting every detail, every slight, every betrayal. Ruth came over with soup and a bottle of wine. She listened as I poured out my heart, her eyes full of sympathy and fire. "You can't let her get away with this, Anna," she said, her voice fierce. "You built that store, you made it what it is. She's just jealous. She wants to erase you so she can take the credit." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I know, but I don't know what to do. Eric won't stand up to her. The staff is scared. I feel so alone." Ruth squeezed my hand. "You're not alone. You have me. You have Leela. And you have the truth. That's more than Dollars will ever have." On Monday morning, I called my lawyer, Mrs. Patel, no relation to the security manager. I explained everything: Dolar's power grab, Eric's silence, the way I'd been pushed out of my own business. She listened carefully, then said, "Anna, you have a strong case. You're the founder, the majority owner, and you have documentation of Dolar's interference. But you need to act fast. If she's trying to take over, she might be making changes to the business structure, the finances, even the staff." I felt a surge of determination. "What do I do?" Mrs. Patel outlined a plan. "File an injunction to prevent any major changes. Call an emergency board meeting, and gather statements from staff who'd witnessed Dolar's behavior." I spent the next 2 days on the phone, meeting with my lawyer, talking to staff, gathering evidence. Maria, my loyal cashier, agreed to write a statement about Dolar's bullying. Tyler, the new hire, admitted he'd been pressured to side with Dolar's. Even Mr. Patel, the security manager, said he'd felt uncomfortable with the way Dolar's had handled things. But the hardest part was facing Eric. He finally came home late Tuesday night, his face drawn, his eyes tired. He stood in the doorway, not meeting my gaze. "I didn't know she'd go that far, Anna. I thought she was just helping." I stared at him, my anger and heartbreak warring inside me. "You let her take everything from me, Eric. You let her treat me like a stranger in my own store. You didn't even try to stop her." He sat at the table, his hands shaking. "I'm sorry. I was scared. She's always been so strong, so sure of herself. I thought if I just stayed out of it, things would work out." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "You can't stay out of it anymore. This is our life, our future. If you can't stand with me, then you're standing against me." He nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do better, I promise." But I could see the doubt in his eyes, the fear, the loyalty that would always be divided. On Wednesday, I showed up at the store with my lawyer and a court order in hand. Dollars was in the office, her feet up on my desk, a smug smile on her face. "Back so soon, dear," she said, not looking up. I handed her the court order, my voice steady. "You're done, Dollars. You're no longer allowed on the premises. The staff has been notified. The locks have been changed." Her face went white, her mouth opening and closing in shock. "You can't do this. Eric will never forgive you." I smiled, my heart pounding. "Maybe not, but I can forgive myself, and I can take back what's mine." I walked out of the office, the staff watching in stunned silence. Maria hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "We missed you, Mrs. Turner. The store isn't the same without you." I hugged her back, feeling the weight of months lift from my shoulders. That night I sat on the porch, the stars bright above me, the air cool and sweet. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd fought for, everything I'd reclaimed. I realized then that sometimes, the only way to save yourself is to let go of the people who want to keep you small. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is standing up for yourself, even if it means breaking someone else's heart. If you want to see what happens when a woman finally reclaims her power, the next part of this story will show you just how far a mother can go when she's fighting for her own future. The next few days were a whirlwind of change. The store felt different, lighter, somehow, as if a storm had finally passed. The staff greeted me with cautious smiles, their relief palpable. Maria brought in homemade muffins, Tyler offered to stay late and help with inventory, and even Mr. Patel, the security manager, seemed to stand a little taller. But the shadow of Dollars still lingered. She called the store every morning, demanding to speak with me, leaving long, angry voicemails about family loyalty and betrayal. She sent emails to the staff, warning them not to trust me, threatening to sue if she wasn't allowed back in. I saved every message, every email, every threat. I forwarded them to my lawyer, who assured me I was doing the right thing. "She's trying to intimidate you, Anna. Don't let her. You have the law on your side." Eric was caught in the middle. He came home late, his face drawn, his eyes full of regret. "I talked to Mom," he said one night, sitting at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee. "She's furious. She says you've ruined everything." I looked at him, my voice calm but firm. "I didn't ruin anything, Eric. I saved what was left. If you can't see that, then maybe you're not the man I thought you were." He flinched, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry, Anna. I don't know how to choose between you and her." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "You don't have to choose, but you do have to decide what kind of man you want to be, what kind of husband, what kind of father." He nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be better. I want to stand with you." The next day, I called a staff meeting. I stood in front of the team, my hands steady, my voice strong. "I know the last few months have been hard," I began. "I know there's been confusion, fear, and a lot of uncertainty. But I want you all to know that this store is a family, and in this family, we treat each other with respect." I looked at Maria, at Tyler, at the faces of the people who had stood by me. "I'm making some changes," I continued. "We're going to rebuild together, and that means letting go of anyone who can't be part of this new chapter." There was a murmur of agreement, a sense of hope in the room. That afternoon, I called Dollar's favorite employee, Linda, into my office. Linda had been with the store since the beginning, but she'd always been more loyal to Dollar's than to me. She undermined my decisions, spread rumors, and sided with Dollar's at every turn. "Linda," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "I appreciate everything you've done for the store, but I need a team I can trust. I'm letting you go, effective immediately." She stared at me, shock and anger flashing in her eyes. "You can't do this. Dollar's will never forgive you." I smiled, my heart steady. "Maybe not, but I can forgive myself, and I can take back what's mine." Linda stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The staff watched in silence, their eyes wide. Maria hugged me, her voice trembling. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Turner. We're with you." I hugged her back, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. That night I sat on the porch, the stars bright above me, the air cool and sweet. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd fought for, everything I'd reclaimed. I realized then that sometimes, the only way to save yourself is to let go of the people who want to keep you small. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is standing up for yourself, even if it means breaking someone else's heart. The news of Linda's firing spread through the store and the community like wildfire. Some customers were shocked, others quietly supportive. A few longtime regulars pulled me aside, their voices low. "I always wondered why Linda was so cold to you, Anna," one woman said, squeezing my hand. "I'm glad you're taking your store back." But not everyone was happy. Dollar's called me that night, her voice icy. "You've made a terrible mistake, Anna. Linda was loyal, she was family. You'll regret this." I listened, my heart pounding, but I didn't let her words shake me. "I need people I can trust, Dollar's. I need a team that believes in me, not just in you." She hung up without another word. Eric was quiet for days. He moved through the house like a ghost, barely speaking, barely eating. I tried to reach him, to remind him that we were a team, but he seemed lost in his own world. One evening, he finally sat down beside me on the porch, his eyes red. "I'm sorry, Anna. I should have stood up for you. I should have seen what was happening. I let my mother control everything, and I let you pay the price." I took his hand, my voice gentle. "It's not too late, Eric, but you have to choose. You can't keep living in her shadow." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I choose you, I choose us." The store began to heal. The staff grew closer, more confident, more willing to share ideas and take risks. Sales improved, customers returned, and the atmosphere shifted from tense to hopeful. Maria was promoted to assistant manager, Tyler took on more responsibility, and even Mr. Patel seemed to walk with a new sense of pride. I started hosting community events, book signings, art shows, charity drives. The store became a gathering place, a hub of laughter and connection, a place where people felt seen and valued. Dolores, meanwhile, retreated. She stopped coming to the store, stopped calling, stopped sending emails. Word got around that she was focusing on her own business, that she was taking a break from family matters. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness, relief that the storm had passed, sadness for the relationship that had never been what I'd hoped. Linda found another job, and though I heard she spoke poorly of me around town, I didn't let it bother me. I knew the truth. I knew what I'd built, what I'd saved, what I'd reclaimed. Ruth and Leela celebrated with me, bringing flowers and champagne, toasting to new beginnings. "You did it, Anna," Ruth said, her eyes shining. "You took your life back." I smiled, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. I did, and I'm never giving it up again. As the months passed, the store flourished. I found joy in the work again, pride in every sale, every smile, every thank you. I realized that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones you fight for yourself. And sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to be erased. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones no one else sees. I never imagined that the woman who called me family would try to erase me from my own store, or that I'd have to choose between keeping the peace and keeping my dignity. But life has a way of showing us who we are when everything we've built is threatened. If you've ever been pushed out of your own story, or if you've ever had to stand up to someone who thought they could take what you worked for, I hope you know you're not alone. I know what it's like to sit in the dark after everyone's gone, to wonder if you're strong enough, if you're brave enough, if you matter enough. I know what it's like to feel the ache of old wounds and the sting of new betrayals, to want to give up and to want to fight at the same time. But I also know that healing is possible. That courage is a choice you make every day, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in ways that change everything. I know that you can lose everything and still find yourself again, that you can be broken and still be whole, that you can be pushed out and still come back stronger. Would you have let your mother-in-law take over, or would you have risked everything to reclaim your place? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story because sometimes sharing our pain is the first step toward healing. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even after the deepest betrayal, you can still choose to begin again. And if you want to see what happens when a woman finally chooses herself, or if you believe in the power of second chances, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next story might just be the one you need.